You are watching the New American Media. Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody, my name's Brian Engelman and you are listening to The Unhappy Hour here on thenewamericanmedia.com. Welcome back everyone, thank you for joining us today. Just want to remind everybody that the show does not stop just because we're not broadcasting live. We never really stop, but we just have different venues where we continue to communicate. So some of the places we want you to follow us, if you would be so kind, go on Twitter. We're constantly on Twitter. We're at American_media_. Follow us there. Go and search The New American Media on Facebook and like our page. That's one of the areas we are expanding a little bit more now. Spent a lot of time on Twitter. And check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. That's always, we're adding contributors on a weekly basis. Things are really starting to move forward. I think 2013 is a year when you guys start joining us and participating in what we're doing now. You're going to see a lot of big things coming this way in 2013. You're going to get to watch the development of this 2-year project as it really starts to take shape. And one of the other best places to find us, you can find 2 years of archived content, different videos, different interviews, different radio shows, a whole bunch of stuff. Go on YouTube, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia, and subscribe to our page and leave some comments. Because part of what we're doing here is we're continuing a conversation. You know, that's one of the key important points that I want to just make sure everybody understands. It's nice that I'm talking, and it's nice that I'm talking to the guests and the co-hosts that regularly come on. Today we're going to have NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris. We're going to talk a little NBA, and then we're going to talk some March Madness. And then after that we're going to be joined with Blake Wally as we shift gears from the Unhappy Hour to Agree to Disagree. And I think for this week's show we're going to change the format. We're going to ask a question. Do you agree or disagree that a student should have the right to bring their handgun to protect themselves on campus? Because in Colorado, a senator was telling a woman who was raped that she should not have been able to defend herself throughout that process. And, you know, we get into those topics over there on Agree to Disagree. We tend to stick to sports for the most part about 90% of the time over here on the Unhappy Hour, but it's a conversation is what I'm getting at. So if you go on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia, subscribe, put your comments down there. You know, join the conversation. That's kind of the part of what we're doing here. We're seeking truth, we're challenging dogma, and we're having fun. And we ask that you join our mostly civil conversation. So I just wanted to bring something to you. This is one of those stories that kind of blends into sports a little bit. From CNN.com, TSA, the transportation, well, you know the TSA. They pat you down when you go fly. They're going to allow pocket knives and some sports equipment now. Small pocket knives and an array of sporting equipment banned from aircraft cabins in the wake of September 11th, 2001 terror attacks will once again be allowed in U.S. planes, the head of the TSA said Tuesday. Knives with blades that are 2.36 inches, that's an odd number, okay, 6 centimeters, we're working on the metric system here, or shorter and less than 1/2 inch wide will be permitted on U.S. Airlines flights as long as the blade is not fixed, nor does it lock into place. Razor blades and box cutters are still not permitted, but the reason this makes it a sports story, you can now bring 2 golf clubs, toy bats, or other sports sticks, such as ski poles, hockey sticks, lacrosse sticks, or pool cues. You can now carry that on with your luggage. So hey sports fans, hey skiers, people that like to ski and play pool at the same time. What if you were skiing on a frozen pool while shooting pool? Okay, I digress. But anyway, for all of you sports enthusiasts, just so you know, you can now bring these things. Well, there's actually some backlash, so let's just wait and see if they continue to allow it, because a lot of people are pretty upset about bringing small fixed blades onto planes again, as you can imagine, but hey, bring your hockey and your lacrosse stick. All right, so without further ado, we're going to jump over to Zak Baris. As we said, he's a Cleveland sports fan and an NBA scout. We bring him in to talk sports with us a lot during the NBA season, and of course right now, gearing up for March Madness. So we'll bring him in and get his quick thoughts on the world of the round ball, Mr. James Naismith's idea.
Hello?
Zach, welcome to the program. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining us again. It's we kind of really got into all the trade talk with who's going to be a free agent next year in our last conversation, and just kind of let's do a couple of quick things here. I'm thinking maybe just kind of see what we're paying attention to in the NBA. Who's going to make that final spot? That it looks like in the Western Conference, that 6, 7, 8 spot, teams either don't want it, or it's interesting to see how that's going to play out. But just wondering where your head's at with the NBA this time of the year as we're gearing up to the playoffs. So,
personally, this is my favorite time of year. This is when the playoff race gets sorted out. This is when the lottery basically gets, sorted out too. You see teams that are starting to fall, and teams, like the Cavaliers who are playing better. Before that trade they made with for Murray Space and Wayne Ellington. I thought they were destined for a number 1 or 2 pick in the draft. Now you're looking at more on the lines of anywhere from 5 through 8. It'll fall down because they've just been playing much better basketball ever since the trade. But obviously the playoffs are more of a concern when you're looking at it. And I tend to see. I think Houston's one of those teams that they're really intriguing because Kevin McHale's completely adapted his system to his players, which at the beginning of the year I did not think he could do. I thought he was a terrible fit for James Harden and guys like Jeremy Lin. I just didn't see how the system would work. And now he's running such a fast-paced offense. That Jeremy Lin just thrives, and he's been playing well. Chandler Parsons. I really love the Houston Rockets. I've loved everything they've done this season. They're one of those teams that is going to be fun to watch come playoff time, and I really, really hope they make it. Just because they're such a fun team to watch. They're so exciting, and they can give Oklahoma City trouble in the playoffs. They can compete with them. I'm not saying they're going to win the series, but they have a lot of young talent. How cool would that be to watch James Harden knock off his former team that traded him? Hey,
trust me, I really wanted the Cavs the past 2 years to sneak in as an eighth seed and get a chance to pull off an upset against the Miami Heat. It hasn't quite worked out that way. But
just imagine can Oklahoma City. I ripped the trade at the beginning of the year, and Oklahoma City, while they've been good, they would be much better with James Harden in their starting lineup.
Most teams would.
And like I said, I've ripped Scott Brooks since last year, ever since the finals. I think his rotation was terrible. And I think Oklahoma City blew their window at a championship by trading Harden. So I'd love to see Houston get in there. Now it's between Golden State, Utah, and the Lakers, basically, for the number 7 and 8 seed. And then, I tend to think Golden State will stay in there. As long as they can stay healthy, they're going to be sitting there in the 7th seed most likely. But, they haven't played too well as of lately. Harrison Barnes hasn't played great. Klay Thompson's been, iffy. And, obviously Steph Curry's been phenomenal. He put up that 54-point performance in the Garden. That's another team I want to see get into the playoffs. I'd love to see the Golden State Warriors get in the playoffs. They're a really exciting young team to watch. And when it comes down to Utah or the Lakers, nobody cares to see the Utah Jazz in the playoffs. Although I do like the Jazz, I like some of their talent. It's just the Lakers make for a much better story and better ratings.
Well, you know what? We talked about it last week. I would like to see in free agency, like we said, Dwight Howard to roll up his sleeves with his nerd glasses on and go play for the Utah Jazz next year. Then I would like to see that in the playoffs. That would be interesting to me. But I kind of think you're right. It's not a very exciting team. The Cavs actually pulled off a very late-minute last-second victory against the Jazz, and it kind of seems like the stars are starting to align for the Lakers to make that push with Dwight, with Kobe, guaranteeing the playoffs, and it kind of seems like they've been able to flip the switch. They're not perfect. They're not the best team in basketball, but they sure are playing differently than they were the first few months of the year.
On paper at the beginning of the year, I said they were maybe the most talented team in the NBA, on paper. That's not saying, so were the Miami Heat 2 years ago, and look what happened to them in the finals,
Absolutely.
Just because whatever's on paper doesn't mean anything. Just because a team's good in NBA 2K does not mean they're going to be good in real life. And, the Lakers, it just hasn't translated into wins this season, whether it's the coaching. I don't think a ton has to do with coaching, but I just think it's a bunch of players that have never played in the system before. They're all out of, everything's all out of sorts here. But the Lakers are starting to pick it up. But like I said, they haven't had any dominating wins against a great team this year.
Right.
Yeah, they were losing they had no business even losing to the New Orleans Hornets by 20 points the other night in the first place. They don't.
I
know they won by a few points, but still, losing to the Hornets by 20 points going into the fourth is unacceptable to begin with. A dominant team and a team that's a playoff caliber team and a championship caliber team should not be having such close games with such bad teams all the time. They haven't had a statement win this year, and when I mean a statement win, they haven't gone out. They haven't beat the Heat by 10 points. They haven't they went out, they haven't beaten the Bulls. The Bulls knocked them off in Chicago. We'll see what they can do this weekend. I mean,
well,
the
Lakers
Chicago will beat the Lakers, but
the Lakers kind of remind me of this. It's kind of like an unreliable car. You get in, and sometimes the battery doesn't crank over immediately. You might need it jumped. You got squeaky brakes; they probably need to be replaced. You have a lot of things falling apart on the car, and it might actually get you to the destination. You might make the playoffs.
It actually kind of reminds me of a nice car. Like I kind of think is a lot of BMWs, and especially it's like my mom's car. My mom has an Audi. The thing's like 2.5 years old, and it seems to always be in the shop. It's never been in an accident, but it's always in the shop. And it's like one of those nice cars. It's a really, really nice car, but yet it never gets you from point A to B. It's always in the shop, or something's always wrong with it. And that's how I view the Lakers. They're a really expensive car, but they just don't seem to function properly.
Okay, well, I'm not going to make the New York Yankees crossover conversation here. We'll stick to basketball. But as you watch the Yankees fall apart, everybody being injured at this point on their team with their enormous payroll, some similarities there. But, yeah, I mean, the Lakers have not been consistent. They have not been reliable. And, of course, Nash was injured. Dwight Howard has been injured. And Kobe's just getting older. You fire your coach 5 games into the season with Mike Brown. You bring in D'Antoni. I mean, there has been nothing stable about this season for the Lakers. But here they are. They're what, a game and a half, 2 games back from the 8th seed?
Yeah. I mean, they're sitting right there, And they really need to, they've been playing better. They have been playing a lot better, but they still haven't been playing to the point where they're going to be able to beat a number 1 or 2 seed. I tend to think with the way Denver's playing right now, if Denver were somehow, Denver's not going to take over that number 1 spot, but, if LA can somehow sneak into 6 or 7, like I said, they're all bunched up right there within a couple of games. LA, I believe, still has a couple of games left against Golden State and Utah. So, if you win those ones right there, you can sneak into the 6 or 7 spot. And if Denver's sitting there at 3, Denver will beat them in 4. A team like the Clippers will beat the Lakers in 4, maybe 5.
Did you learn anything from the Lakers' recent loss a couple of days ago to the Thunder? Did you come away with anything different? Any different opinions watching that game? Because it was one they just couldn't...
The Oklahoma City Thunder are a much more elite team than the LA Lakers. That's what I came across. It's something I've already known all year. The Lakers just they cannot compete with the top talents of the NBA. Like I said, they're not going to be able to. It'd be nice for them to make the playoffs this year. You always want to see them make the playoffs. If they don't, like I said, whether they're an 8th seed or they don't get in, they're not getting past the first round of the playoffs anyways, unless something drastic happens where Tim Duncan or Tony Parker goes down, something like that along those lines. Even though Parker is out right now to begin with, but. I just can't see the Lakers making a run at the playoffs this year. Now, it could totally change if Dwight Howard gets back into dominant mode, and then anything could happen, but he just hasn't shown it this year. There's some games where I've watched Dwight and I go, okay, he's back. He put up 24 and 18 tonight. This guy's back. And then the next game he puts up 16 and 9. And I'm like, okay, maybe he's not back. Goes 3 for 14 from the free throw line. What they need to do is they need Dwight. I personally think, if the Lakers, if Dwight Howard, Chris Broussard actually wrote an article on it this morning on ESPN, but basically saying how Dwight needs to commit to LA now and basically say he's here, he's not going to be happy anywhere else. I think that will improve the chemistry of the Lakers. It definitely will. I've been saying that all year. Broussard wrote it this morning, so got to give him credit for that. But he said something today that everyone else has been thinking all year.
Yeah, well, I thought the same. I thought the same about LeBron when he won his MVP. I think he was playing the Bulls at the time, and one of my prevailing thoughts, as free agency was looming, was, how about you accept your MVP trophy? You pull out a little table and you sign your contract extension on the floor and you roll through the playoffs and bring home a championship. That never happened because it wasn't in his heart. He didn't want to do it. And I don't know what Dwight's thinking at this point. I don't know where he thinks he's going to be happier.
I tend to think everything tells me, everything my gut tells me Dwight Howard will stay in LA Lakers. It's just no one leaves LA. But at the same time, if he was going to stay in LA Lakers, why would he be doing this? Why would he be, constantly saying, free agency is my choice. It's what I want to do. And you're like, okay, well then give the guy free agency, But it's just hard for me to imagine anyone passing up $30 million and a chance to stay in LA to go to a different city. It's very hard for me to imagine. Like I said, this isn't Detroit.
Right.
This is not a small city with bad weather. This is one of the.
Well, explain Kevin Durant then. He didn't even get to free agency.
Well, Kevin Durant won't hit free agency yet. I mean, don't forget Durant. When you're in that rookie contract, you're basically automatically locked up for 7 years minimum. You're basically locked up for 7 years. So Durant chose the full extension, so he's locked up for 8 altogether. So he'll spend 8 seasons before he hits free agency. Now, Durant may go and test free agency. We don't know what he's going to do in 2 or 3 years. I think it's 3 years from now what he's going to do. We have no clue.
Yeah, but he had that opportunity recently, and he didn't even bother with it.
He would have been able to test restricted free agency. That's what it was. And anyways, Oklahoma City would have matched the deal no matter what. So it wouldn't have mattered. No matter what, he wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't able to leave in the first place. He also kept quiet about it. I think Durant's just a little bit different of a guy, than LeBron. He's not, it's also, I think it's also the market he plays in. Durant still, Oklahoma City does not get the attention they should.
You mean Kevin Durant has never hosted Saturday Night Live?
I don't know if he has or not. I mean, I really don't care.
Oh, geez, I actually don't know with certainty.
Oklahoma City, though, is a very, when people call Cleveland a small market, Cleveland's not that small of a market when you think about it. The Cleveland-Akron area is still one of the largest 15 metropolitan areas in the United States. It's not a small, Oklahoma City is the 46th largest. So that is a small town.
Yeah. And
going by, it's a one-sport city, it's guys like Tim Duncan, as great as he's been his whole career, if he would have played in New York or Boston, or Chicago or L.A., he would have been much more hyped than he would have been playing in San Antonio. Duncan's always been okay. He's a quiet guy. He's okay with flying under the radar. Kevin Durant's biggest claim to fame so far, where people know him is that movie Thunderstruck, which probably 9 people saw.
Did you feel the same way about LeBron in Cleveland?
No, LeBron was a global superstar in high school. It didn't matter. LeBron could have. I think it would have. I think Cleveland was a big enough market. It was his hometown, anyways. Cleveland, like I said, Cleveland's not that small of a market. It would have been different had LeBron gone in Oklahoma City. I don't know if he would have been as hyped. It's like Durant still gets a lot of hype, but it's just not like he would in New York or somewhere else or a bigger market.
Yeah, because I think LeBron James is like a Michael Jordan kind of player, a great player. A Charles Barkley. Let's go back. David Robinson. Go back to a generation before, or a Stockton or somebody. Malone. Good, very good players. Great players even, that's one thing. But global superstar icon, the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, that type of Kobe Bryant, those do transcend the market you're playing in. With the internet, I don't think it's like it used to be where you need to be on a coast to be in like one of those 5 cities to get attention. I think with the internet, if you're that darn good, you're that good. And you don't need to go for fame, it finds you.
LeBron's been making names for himself since he was 16 and 17 when he was on the cover of ESPN, the magazine, and Sports Illustrated. And he was already big. Not everyone around the country knew who he was. Because I still remember, I was coming back from Buenos Aires, Argentina, when I was, I had to be in 9th grade, and LeBron, his team was coming back from L.A., and I happened to have the cover of ESPN in my bag. I was reading it on the plane, had him autograph it inside at Hopkins Airport. And I remember next week I was telling someone, and someone goes, "Who's LeBron James?" And he was well known, by anyone in basketball. Obviously to the good basketball fan, but to someone who casually follows the sport, not necessarily. But everybody nowadays knows who LeBron James is. Everybody knew who he was in Cleveland. Everybody around the world knows who he was. And it's the same with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is playing on a bad team in Cleveland. Yet everyone now knows who he is.
Thanks to that All-Star weekend.
He's still at the point where he's only in his 2nd year in the league. But everyone now knows who Kyrie Irving is. That wouldn't necessarily happen if he was playing in a smaller market. That's what it is. Cleveland gets ridiculed for being a small market team, and they're not necessarily a small market when you look at the numbers. Their games were always, they always had the max number of televised games when LeBron was in Cleveland, which was 32 a year, I believe. Plus all the NBA TV games. Cleveland was constantly on national television basically every other night. Every other game they were on national television for the most part. And, they received, there was a lot, like you said, you don't have to be playing in the New Yorks or Los Angeles to get attention anymore. But like I said, the market size still matters a little bit, basically. Like I said, Cleveland's still a 3-sport city. They still have a football, basketball, and baseball team. LeBron was able to get the recognition there. It's like Miami's a 3-sport city, too, because I don't count the Florida Panthers because they're in Fort Lauderdale. But, Miami's one of those things. Miami's not a gigantic city by any means. It's not. It's more of an international city. But it's not that big of a city. And when you think about it, the Miami-Dade County area is not that big. It's only about 4.5 million people. It's not on the likes of Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, or, it's still smaller than Boston, Atlanta. It's still smaller than all of those cities, and Houston.
Well, you brought up Kyrie Irving, and that's a place I wanted to take this because, we're talking about the Western Conference. I want to briefly talk about if there's any other storylines we're following in the East here as we head toward the playoffs. But Kyrie Irving, the new face of the Cleveland Cavs, obviously breakout weekend with All-Star Week this year. First appearance, winning the three-point contest. Just a fantastic showing in the rookies versus sophomores game, and then a really solid to good game in the All-Star game itself. There have been recent reports now coming out that there's at least internal talk, and now Byron Scott and Kyrie have taken it a little bit more public about the option of shutting Kyrie down for the season with a nagging injury. What are your thoughts on this? Because we were talking about the best teams fighting for playoff spots, and of course the Cavs, who are hoping to get the best draft pick to reload and go out and compete.
I'm just going to tell you it's like this. If the Cavaliers were going to shut down Kyrie Irving, I can tell you they would shut him down tonight, and he's playing tonight, from what I understand. He's got a stomach flu and a bad knee, and the guy's still playing tonight.
Okay.
So take it for what it's worth. I don't believe all the talk. They're not going to shut the guy down for a season. Now, if he really has a real knee problem, there's no reason to make it worse. Let Sean Livingston play, see what he can do. He's been very, very good in the starting roles. And, in the games that Kyrie missed, Dion Waiters looks spectacular without Kyrie, handling the ball more. Sometimes it's not always a bad option. But like I said, you don't have to necessarily, there's still, I believe, like 6 weeks left of the regular season. You don't have to just shut down the guy for the entire season. You can shut him down for 2 weeks. You want to get your star healthy. You don't want him tearing an ACL or, needing microfracture knee surgery and ruining the future of the franchise. You don't want that to happen, especially the Cavaliers are not competing for a championship this year. So you can't even put that fragile label on him. It's just a matter of the Cavaliers just being smart and doing their due diligence. Because don't forget, this is a guy who came up playing 11 games 2 years ago to playing, in a 66-game condensed schedule last season, where they did have to shut him down for a while because they were playing almost every night. Don't forget, these college teams play 2 days a week.
Right.
College teams play usually on Wednesdays and Saturdays or Thursdays and Sundays. They're not playing 4 or 5 games a week like 3 to 5 games a week like NBA teams. So you have to take it for what it's worth. And Kyrie Irving, it's just, you can't just subject these kids, these long shows as they start to fade down the stretch. Dion Waiters, usually rookies fade down the stretch. It's happened this year to Harrison Barnes. It's happened to a lot of the rookies this year. Instead, Dion Waiters started off the year really poorly, and he's just been getting better and better.
Do you think any of that was conditioning?
Really good sign for the Cavs.
Do you think any of that was conditioning with Dion?
I think a lot of the fact that, don't forget, Dion Waiters hadn't started a game since high school.
He was a sixth man in college, yeah.
He didn't even start a game in his collegiate career. So
it reminded me of James Harden. A guy is your sixth man coming in off the bench, and then you give him a shot. It's like, give him a second to adjust, and look, you can actually do some good things.
And I think he's looked really good this year. At the beginning of the year, I said I projected him as a long-term sixth man is what I projected him. But, that's not a bad thing. John Starks was a great sixth man in this league. There's been a lot of good sixth men in this league. And I said he's a sixth man on a championship caliber team. Now I look at him and I go, he's a starting shooting guard on a really, really good team someday. Like I said, the Cavaliers still need an extra piece in there, whether, the draft comes and they draft a guy like Otto Porter out of Georgetown, getting a small forward in there, or Shabazz Muhammad from UCLA, or even going and drafting Nerlens Noel from Kentucky, or the center Alex Len from Maryland. The Cavaliers still are a couple pieces away, but they can be able to fill in 2 of those pieces just through the draft this year, whether if they can somehow, package, let's say the Lakers do make the playoffs, this for the Cavaliers, and they can somehow trade up. They do have 2 early second round picks.
Well, let's explain that real quick. You and I talk about it all the time, but of course, because of one of the previous trades the Cavs made, if the Lakers make the playoffs this year, they'll have a draft pick somewhere in the middle, and the Cavaliers will then have the option to trade their pick that they get from Miami with the Lakers. So they'll go from one of the worst first-round draft picks to something right up in the middle, going along with what they already have, and they could package those into something to move up even higher.
I think the Cavaliers would look to add a Trey Burke type player. Like I said, I have a feeling. I don't know how you can't like him. I was watching the Michigan-Purdue game the other night, and I just, every time I watch it, I do not like Michigan. I can't stand Michigan. My sister goes there. I can't stand anything about the school. But on the other hand, I have to say their basketball team is fun to watch.
It reminds me of a song about "Don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan."
Yeah, I know, but I do enjoy watching Trey Burke, and I think he's going to be a phenomenal NBA player. I really do, especially off the bench. I think he has the potential to become, one of those guys who can come off the bench, maybe even better version of Eric Bledsoe. If he was 6'2", 6'3", he'd be in talks to be the number 1 overall pick. There'd be a good chance he would be, but he's not. The kid's 5'11", and that's the only thing that's hurting him. But like I said, at the next level, if the Cavaliers can get him, pair him up with Kyrie Irving and Deion Waiters, and suddenly you have a backup who can score efficiently off the bench, and he takes a lot of smart shots. He's a really, he's a good passer. I love everything about his game. Obviously he does need some work, but he's one of my favorite players in college basketball, and he'd be an excellent fit on them. And if they can somehow draft Otto Porter too at the 3, I think he's one of those guys that come tournament time could shoot up on, I'm not thinking a Carmelo Anthony type level, but he did just have a huge game last week against Syracuse. And, he's put up some big games lately where I believe he put up 36 points the other day. He's one of those guys that's starting to shoot up boards. He's a really good defender. And that would make the Cavaliers a dangerous team come, next year. I would think, especially next year, because they do have that cap room and they will fill it in with someone, whether it's an NBA veteran, who they trade for, or whether they use that in free agency a year later. I just can tell you right now, they're not going to waste their money in free agency next year.
Well, let me clear something up from a second ago. Full disclosure, you're listening to 2 Ohio State Buckeye fans, so we're a little gentle ribbing on the whole state of Michigan. I actually do like the state, but you got to have a little bit of gentle hatred for the school up north. So. That school up north. I guess it's up east at this point since we're out on the West Coast. But now we're talking Wolverines and talking Ohio State Buckeyes. I want to get to March Madness in just a second, but I just want to wrap this up. As far as the playoff teams in the East, is it pretty much set? Chicago, Boston, Milwaukee at 6, 7, 8. Is there any way Toronto or Philly can jump up there?
Toronto's
or Detroit?
Well, but they're 7.5 games out of that 8 seed. I just can't see them catching up unless they somehow, basically get close to winning out. They really have to. Milwaukee has to tank.
Yeah.
But Boston's been playing well ever since Rondo. And I mean, this is the first year in a long time, I think, we're going to see the Eastern Conference team have more than 40 wins. The 8th team. The AC team be above 500, or around, it's always, there always seems to be a 34-win team that sneaks into the playoffs. I think the last time was when Chicago went 41-41 and the Cavaliers beat them in the first round in 5 games 3 years ago. I think that was the last time, and it was like, I think it's been one time now in the past 8 or 9 years, 10 years that's happened in the East.
Was that the famous LeBron with his shooting with the other elbow, the phantom injury thing? Wasn't that against the Bulls?
Yes,
love that one. Okay, so with that being said, then let's just real quick, if we know who's going to be in the playoffs, we already talked about the West Coast. Who are the top 5 draft prospects right now? I know it can change, and I know it's a scattershot.
Almost 10 of them. That's the thing, is there's no dominant prospect in this year's draft. Like I said earlier, I mean, you have Nerlens Noel from Kentucky, the center, who tore his ACL. You have Ben McLemore, the shooting guard from Kansas, who is sometimes I've watched the guy and I go, wow, looks unbelievable. And then there's other times where I go, I don't know. Then you have there's Otto Porter from Georgetown, who I really like.
Talk about Otto Porter for a second, because that is I cannot get away from the Otto Porter conversation. Tell us about what this kid's bringing to the table, because if you go on the Plain Dealer, every Cavs post, people are talking about Otto Porter, Otto Porter, Otto Porter. So
unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to watch the majority of his games. I've seen around 7 or 8 of Georgetown's games this year. It's just how it is. Because like I said, I work on the West Coast, and I watch a lot of West Coast teams. So, but from what I've seen with Otto Porter lately, he's one of those guys whose draft stock is just rising down the stretch.
Right.
He's got those guys. I can tell you right now, if Georgetown has a really good tournament, he's going to be one of those guys that's in the mix for a top 2 pick.
Oh, wow.
I think it all depends. This year there's no real, there's no defined number 1 pick. Last year there was a defined number 1 pick. You had Anthony Davis. The year before that, you had it was Kyrie Irving. There was really,
a standout, somebody far better.
No standout prospect this year. Every prospect that I've seen, there's Anthony Bennett too from UNLV, who at times I've gone, if he was a little bit bigger, if he was 2 inches bigger, 6'7" power forward, he was 2 to 3 inches bigger, the guy would easily be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, but he's not. It's like saying if Trey Burke was 3.5, 4 inches taller. But
well, if the Cavs had more wins, they'd be a playoff team. you know.
There's also Marcus Smart, the point guard from Oklahoma State. I've had the chance to watch him. He's a good defender. I do like him too. He's also in the mix. If a team like Orlando gets the number 1 overall pick, I can tell you they're going to jump on that one. They would take him number 1 overall. And then, obviously, guys like Cody Zeller have fallen. I never really thought Cody Zeller was in the mix to be the number 1 overall pick this year. Anyways, I always liked him. I think he should have gone out last year when he would have gone 6 to 7, because that's probably where he's going to go this year. He's going to go anywhere in the 6 to 10 range, I think, or 6 to 9.
Well, you know what? Right in that 6 to 9, you have Cleveland. Right now, I think they're somewhere around the 8th. They'd be somewhere within the top 8 picks, probably around 8.
I believe the Cavaliers are sitting there with the 6th pick, if I'm not mistaken, right now, if everything worked out.
You got ahead of them. I would say behind them or ahead of them in the draft. You got the Bobcats. You got the Magic. You got the Wizards. You have the Sacramento Kings. You have the New Orleans Hornets, and we're tied with Phoenix right now. So that's
so that gives you the guys in that
7.
range you're going to be looking at are Otto Porter could be sitting there, guys like Alex Len could be there, Bennett, Oladipo, and Mohammed. Do I think the Cavaliers would draft Oladipo? I don't know. I mean, he's the best defender in the nation right now. And he's so good in the clutch. He's one of those guys. He's also in the mix for a top 3 to top 5 pick too. It just depends. I think it's all going to depend on team needs.
So you're saying this year it's not so bad being 5, 6, 7, or 8 this year as opposed to why did we have to settle for Carmelo when we could have had LeBron? Not that there's anything wrong with Carmelo, but there's only one LeBron every decade.
Well, exactly, and you're sitting there now and going, it might not be the worst choice, because let's say the Orlando Magic grab the number 1 overall pick and they take Marcus Smart, and then McLemore, Noel, Porter, and Mohammed all become better players. Then you're sitting there and go, wow, Orlando really screwed this one up. And that's why you almost don't want it. Whether the Cavaliers are sitting at 3 or 6, they're still going to have their choice of an impact player. Like I said, this draft is very, very deep. It just isn't. There's no star player. And if the Cavaliers, let's say they do land Porter and Trey Burke, or Nerlens Noel and Trey Burke, or on one of those guys, or they, or Alex Poitras from Kentucky, the small forward, falls out of the lottery there. He's been a little bit of an enigma this season. He was projected to be, at the beginning of the season, he was doing really well, and he's just faded off considerably as a year on. I think he needs another year in school, but we'll see what happens. A lot of guys, when they're lottery picks, they tend to leave.
Right.
And if the Cavaliers can land a guy like him, you're going, okay, if he's sitting there at 15, when if the Cavaliers come on the board and the Lakers do get that 8th seed, I think it would be tough for the Cavs to pass on him if Trey Burke's already gone.
Cavs have a lot of chips, a lot of navigating, a lot of negotiating possibilities.
It's also a highly tradable pick too.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
You can, like I said, if the Cavaliers feel they can package it up, or they can trade it, help move for a veteran. If they choose to trade that pick and Varejao to try to move them, in another future asset, they might be able to get a really, really impactful player for the following season, and they might just pull the trigger. Chris Grant has something up his sleeve. Like I said, I tend to think the Cavaliers are going to try for the playoffs next season. I'd be shocked if they did that. I'd be shocked if they didn't do that, because you're not going to be able to lure free agents to Cleveland without being a playoff team. They're not. Cleveland's already a hard enough sell as it is. If they wouldn't go out and win 29 or 30 games next year, they're not going to be able to sell Cleveland to anyone. But if you go and win 44 games next year, like I said, you fill out the bench, you re-sign Space and Ellington, you bring in another guy off the bench, maybe a DeJuan Blair type, and then suddenly you have Porter and Burke in the mix, and you're suddenly looking at a team that, let's say they win 43, 44 games, and a guy who's who can make a giant-sized impact in the free agent market goes, you know what, I think I can help this team. Irving will be in his 4th year. We can do big things in Cleveland. Waiters showed progress. I can take this team to 60 to 62 wins. I think a lot depends on what happens with LeBron James. I talk to a lot of delusional Miami fans all the time, and they go, the big three's staying intact. The big three's all going to be together forever. And I go, I was like, what makes you think that? And they go, well, we're going to three-peat. I go, there's a good chance you do three-peat. I always tell them that. I said, they're probably going to win it this year. There's a decent chance they win it next year too. With the way it's just because LeBron's so good. But, LeBron has a chance to go to a better roster in 2 years from now. I'm not necessarily saying it'll even be the Cavs, but he will have his choice at a better roster because Chris Bosh will opt out, and Miami's looking at, significant luxury tax penalties next season of $85 million, for the repeaters tax, which is just an enormous amount of money. It's just an astronomical amount to pay, especially if the team doesn't win. So I think Miami's going to start exploring their options next year. Like I said, if they win this year, they're going to keep the team intact most likely. But at the same time, you could also look at trading someone too.
We're talking with NBA scout Zak Baris. Zach, I want to bounce over real quick and talk a little bit about March Madness. You have everything starting to kind of gear up. You got your Gonzagas, your Dukes, your Indianas, your Kansases. But a lot of people are, well, it's kind of similar to how you're viewing the NBA draft, where there might not be a clear-cut number one game changer that you need to draft at the number one pick. What are your thoughts on this March Madness as it starts to take shape here?
It's this one. Like I said, this is the first March Madness in a while where I haven't seen any dominant team, in the tournament. There's not one dominant team in college basketball that I said all year. Like last year, when I was on the show all the time, I said it's Kentucky, Kentucky, Kentucky. I said that all year, even though Calipari teams always blow it. I still said last year Kentucky was the team to beat throughout the entire tournament, and they made their mark and they pushed their way through and basically dominated every stage.
Let me ask you this, right? Because they were able to dominate last year, but on a slightly different note here, have you ever won a bracket? Have you ever filled out a bracket in a pool and won? Because I haven't.
I've come in second place one time and third place another. And then when we always did our office pool at my old place, we're just doing it for fun. We were never doing it for money. And last year and 2 years ago, I had very, very good brackets filled out. I had a ton right last season, especially last season. I think I had the entire Final Four predicted last year, in my bracket. In the year before, my mistake was I had Arizona winning it all. Sorry, I'm an alumni.
You're a homer.
Arizona.
Homer.
I'm a homer. So, and I picked my guys to win it, but we lost to UConn, and that, it was frustrating. But like I said, I've done very well the last couple of years, especially since I've been paying more attention. And I tend to think this year, I think all what happens in conference tournament play, but you're looking right now, Gonzaga's probably going to get that number one seed.
That's pretty amazing. That's a pretty big deal.
I just can't see them losing their tournament, obviously Kansas will probably get a number one just because they've been beating, around teams around the Big 12. And, like I said, I think one of the Big 10 teams is going to wind up getting a number one seed, whether it's Indiana or Michigan. And if Ohio State can even go and have a big one, I think Ohio State can go as high as number two. If Ohio State manages to win that
There's
tournament.
A lot of teams that have been number one throughout this season that have gotten knocked off, that have at least tasted a part of being, the number one ranked team in the nation. You got a lot of opportunities.
When I watched Ohio State, beat Indiana pretty hard, in Bloomington, that was something that I was pretty unexpected of them. And, of course, the talent's there with Ohio State. They were a top three team at the beginning of the season. I believe they were number 2 or 3. But
that Michigan loss was pretty tough. I remember watching that one. That was pretty hard.
Yeah, but like I said, they've also beaten Michigan this year, and Michigan hasn't. Michigan barely beat Purdue the other night. It's not like Michigan's played phenomenally. I don't see Michigan as a Final Four team. Their style of play just, and John Beilein, don't forget, none of his teams at Michigan have made it past the second round of the tournament. Just remember, I do think Michigan is a fantastic team, but they're one of those teams that can get knocked off early. It happened to them last year and the year before. And so right now, I think, like I said, let's see what happens in the ACC tournament. But like I said, I think it's going to be Duke or Miami is going to get that number one. But it'll probably be Duke. But, it's one of those. And then you're looking, and then I think Indiana, like I said, it's going to be Indiana or Michigan will probably get the other number one seed, depending on what happens in the Big Ten tournament.
Let me do a little machine gun style here and just kind of ask you if you could envision these teams possibly winning it all. Gonzaga, Kansas, Duke, Indiana. All sure things. Yes, you could see all of them possibly winning the whole thing.
Yeah, I think the most realistic winning team of that would be Indiana, just because they've had such stiff competition all year. If Oladipo keeps playing, like he has been, I think they have a really good shot to win the tournament. But like I said, all it takes is one great game from Ohio State, where, if Aaron, I think Ohio State's one of those teams. I tended to say I could see Ohio State being knocked out in the first round of the tournament. I've been saying that for the last 6 weeks. But they're one of those teams where if they do get knocked out in the first round, doesn't shock me. If they go and make the Final Four, it will not shock me because you have an elite scorer like Deshaun Thomas. I think a lot depends on your X factor, and that's Aaron Kraft. If Aaron Kraft can get to the rim and score, Ohio State's not going to lose. It just hasn't happened. You know, when he did
I've
against
seen
Indiana,
Aaron Kraft. I've seen Aaron Kraft pretty dominant, and I've seen him kind of out of control.
Exactly. Aaron Kraft's one of those offensive players, you know, like what he did against Michigan State recently and what he did against Indiana, that tells me that Ohio State has the potential to make the Final Four this season. I hadn't said it all year. You know, I just said Ohio State was underachieving all year. But with the way Aaron Kraft has played as of late, you know, he's still one of the best point guards in the country. He's a shutdown, you know, he's a shutdown guard. You know, he's one of those guys who could probably shut down Marcus Smart. He helped shut down Trey Burke earlier in the year.
He's an amazing defensive player, really.
He's one of those guys where if he's going up against a team that solely relies on their point guard offensively to do the work, you know, they're going to have trouble beating Ohio State.
Absolutely, I agree. Let me go wrap that up.
And that's what I say. That's where Ohio State fits in. But at the same time, if Kraft doesn't do anything offensively, Ohio State's one of those teams that could easily be knocked out in the first round.
Yeah. Let me bounce to make this a little harder on you. Obviously, some of these top teams. What about? Could you see any of these teams winning it? Florida, Georgetown, Louisville, or Michigan?
I really like Georgetown because Otto Porter's one of those. He's, like I said, lately he's had the ability to take over a game and put up consistent points at, you know, at a rapid pace, and that's what makes me like Georgetown a lot. Michigan, like I said, Trey Burke, you know, over there with, you know, with Robinson and Hardaway, you know, and if McGarry plays strong, I think they have a chance. But when Michigan goes against a team that has solid bigs, they do not play well. You know, and that's
and to win it all, they're eventually going to run into somebody.
Yeah. Well, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Michigan could run into some smaller schools, or they could run into a team. You know, I don't think Michigan matches up well against a team like Duke. You know, with Ryan Kelly and Plumlee, I think that's a poor matchup for them. But, you know, like I said, it all depends what happens. You know, I think North Carolina's underachieved all year with James McAdoo, and I can't see them winning it. But like I said, I think Georgetown has a decent chance. You know, and it's a team like, you know, UCLA right now is going to go in there anywhere. UCLA is going to get in there anywhere from a 6 seed to a 9 seed. And UCLA's got the talent between Kyle Anderson, Larry Drew, and Shabazz Muhammad and Tony Parker. They're one of those teams where if Shabazz gets hot at the right time, I've seen UCLA at times this year where they look unbeatable sometimes. And they're one of those teams that can get to the Final Four, too. There's just so much unpredictability and so, you know, there's very little stability this year, you know. And I think another team that will get in there is around a 10 or 12 seed, anywhere in between there. A team that's played really well. They just knocked off Oregon, you know, is Colorado. You know, they clobbered Arizona this year. They've had some big wins. And I think Colorado is one of those teams that could sneak its way in there and be one of those teams that goes far.
Well, it's going to be fun for sure. Hopefully I'll do a little bit better in my bracket. I've never really done great.
It's going to be one of these years where it's going to be very unpredictable. You know, I'm sitting here. I'm just pulling up right now. I'm pulling up a bracketology thing right now.
Yeah, we might be looking at the same one.
I'm looking at projected matchups right now. I'm just looking up, and you know, I'm looking at one where it says Cal against Butler. You know, with Joe Lunardi's, and I'm just looking and I go, if Alan Crabb's playing, you know, off his rocker and draining threes, Cal's one of those teams too that could be really exciting down the stretch in the tournament. You know, because they have big play potential from one of their players, and usually teams that do well in the tournament is because one player gets hot. Remember Kemba Walker from a few years ago. Remember Anthony Davis and Terrence Jones last year, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist down the stretch with Kentucky last year. You know, and Robinson and Whitty, you know, carrying Kansas last year. You know, that's what happens. It's usually, it's not, you know, sometimes it's a team effort. But, you know, a few years ago when Butler made it, it was Gordon Hayward and Sheldon Mack that can, you know, that carried that team to the Final Four.
And you just got to be playing right at the right time of year.
You need that one guy to get really, really, really hot at that, you know, and be very streaky. And that's what happens. These are these teams who do well in the tournament. Is when teams can get streaky, when these players get streaky and they get hot. Look what, you know, Carmelo Anthony. You know, that was not a great Syracuse team that won it back in 2002. You know, that was or the 2002-2003 season. You know, that was not a great team. You know, Carmelo just got hot at the right point and became a superstar overnight, essentially. You know, and that's what happened with them. So, like I said, all it takes is one superstar performance from one player that gets hot. You know, and suddenly, you know, that team takes over. You know, or you could look at a team kind of like Arizona, who at times this year looks to be so dominant. You know, they don't have one dominant player; they just have a bunch of really good players. And if they all get hot at the right time, that's a team that can make a run, or it's a team that could lose easily in the first round of the tournament. I see. Being a number 3 or 4 seed that gets upset in the first round, I think that could easily happen to them.
Well, I'll tell you what, Zach, we'll wrap it up for now, but I think it's going to get real interesting here in the next couple of weeks as March Madness takes its firm hold on every office space in America. I mean, there used to be a time where it would be sneaky. You'd try to get TVs and get people to watch stuff, and then it was on your computer. Now it's on everybody's phones real time. So I think it's going to grip the nation. It will be a literal, like a bit of madness is a great word for it, I suppose, but it's going to ravage through this nation. Every workspace with dudes hanging out, everybody's going to be watching it in real time, and of course, we'll be gearing up for the NBA playoffs. So let's just stay connected over the next few weeks. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm
excited. I'm going to Vegas next week for the Pac-12 tournament, so I couldn't be any more excited.
Hang on a second now. Next week, when are you going?
I'm going on Tuesday.
Okay.
The tournament starts on the 13th. It's the 13th to 16th, but I'll be there from the 12th to the 16th.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna miss you by a couple of days, but sooner than later we're gonna hang out off air and get a chance to connect a little bit. So, Zach, best wishes to you. I know you're gonna have a busy weekend over here at the Lakers game, and then doing your travels as usual. So, once again, everybody, this is Zach, NBA scout, lifelong Cleveland sports fan. You can follow him on Twitter. He's at ZBaris. That's ZBaris. It's always a pleasure having you on the program, especially during a hoop season. So, thanks again for joining us, Zach. We'll be talking with you soon. All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Have a good one.
That is Zak Baris, good friend of the program. Yeah, I like this part of the season. I like this time of the year, if you will. It is nice. It feels good to. It just feels good. Everything's kind of changing. The weather's changing. The sports seasons are changing. Football is changing. Getting ready for the NBA draft. March Madness starting. The last couple of weeks have just been kind of difficult for me. If spring training is starting, baseball's starting. I mean, jeez. It really is some of my favorite sports times starting to come up here. It's not as fun when you're not rooting for your Cavaliers to compete for a championship for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row. But it is still a fun time of the season, and special thanks to Zach for joining us on the program again. So everybody, just hang tight for another couple of minutes. We're going to be back. We're going to shift gears here, and we're going to move from the Unhappy Hour, the only Cleveland-centric, Los Angeles-based sports show that we're currently aware of, into Agree to Disagree. We talk everything you're not supposed to talk about inside of a bar. Politics, spirituality, finance, everything you're not supposed to talk about inside of a bar. That's what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be bringing in... I almost said Zach. We're not bringing Zach back. We're going to be bringing in Blake, the eccentric Wally. Blake and I have been co-hosting over on his show on the Freedomizer Radio Network every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific. You can find him there. I've been co-hosting the Monday shows from noon to 1:30 for coming up on a year now. And we're also in talks for a syndicated, nationally broadcast radio program that we think is going to air. It's going to debut late April, May, so we got like a month or two, and Blake and I are going to launch that program, as yet to be titled, but we want you to check it out. So we're gonna kind of go through a few different things. We're going to talk about some of the different stories in the week. Some of the things we're talking about: the filibuster, of course, with Mr. Rand Paul, Hugo Chavez dying, the sequestration stuff, North Korea threatening a preemptive nuclear attack. Come on, man. I thought Dennis Rodman worked his magic better than that. And, of course, the media ignoring the Department of Homeland Security build-up. We're going to talk about the Colorado senator that... this story's really going to get me when I get going on it, but she's talking to a rape victim about how she doesn't think that she had the right to have a gun on campus to protect herself. This woman got raped, and the senator's up there on her high horse telling her that she didn't have the right to defend herself and that there's a reason that guns should be banned, and I disagree completely. As I recently got to tell Piers Morgan as I shook his hand and thanked him for bringing up the conversation. But that's what we're getting into over here on Agree to Disagree. Hope you stick around with us. Follow us on Twitter at American_media_. Subscribe to the New American Media on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The New American Media, and search The New American Media on Facebook and like our page. We'll be right back in just a second. Thanks.
You are listening to the New American Media.
Welcome back, netizens, to this newest edition in Juice Media series of rap news journalism with me, Robert Foster. This evening we're actively delving in depth to facts which affect all of us who dwell on this internet, and we've got to give a special welcome to all the ladies and agents from the NSA, AC, or MI5. Glad you're listening in, because today's show is all about surveillance and how it's spreading from the streets into our modems. As we speak, laws are being tacitly written in to implement ways of controlling the expanse of this internet to keep us safe, we're told. But from whom? And will this place ever be the same if these plans go through? To find out, we connect with our first guest to comment on the matter. We're live at the Panopticon with General Baxter. General? Son? Good to have you back again with us. Explain why the state is spying on us.
My fellow Oceanians, as you know, we've always been at war with Eurasia. Or is it East Asia? Either way, it's war and we need division to wage it. But now the proles are connecting online, bypassing these illusory divisions of race, religion, and nationality.
Sounds grand to me.
It's a catastrophe. Centuries of hard work are being undone, profits are vanishing, and it's due to the internet. It's empowering humanity. We need to get this snafu under control rapidly.
How?
Behold the latest weapon in the war of terror. Our greatest invention since 9/11. Guaranteed to keep us free and safe forever. I give you the surveillance state, ladies and generals. Our secret wires log your keys dial. Monitor every single number on your speed dial. Rewind straight to your position with facial recognition and pinpoint you within 0.03 of a mile. We've put eyes everywhere without consulting you, keeping you safe whether or not you want us to. Soon there'll be no freedoms left for threatening. Then we'll have won the war. Take that, terrorism.
Brilliant. Thank you, General. We now interview our resident guru, Terrence Moonseed, for a different view.
Greetings.
How does this situation look?
I have one word for you, Robert. Double plus ungood. The world populace of 7.4 billion are all headed in the direction of Orwellian totalitarian oblivion. My voice is hoarse, yelling about stellar winds, cold chilling them and trap wire weaving through the world wide web we all dwelling in. Face it, the all-seeing eyes in all of our Facebooks like a virus, and in these iPhones with Siri, or should I say Iris. Next in line is RFID devices and mind chips triggered by chemtrails the plague spray the sky with. This time it's too far. Check out the base they're building in Utah, where they'll be storing all your data for over a century. It's FUBAR, and under the outback is an entire tunnel of wires, an echelon base called Pine Gap to hijack our mother Gaia.
Hey, maybe your mother's gayer.
Boo-hoo. Why didn't you just kill yourself like most of your troops do?
That's it. Now you're on the cast iron list.
Hang on, General. Why weren't we informed about this?
Sorry we didn't tell you about our grand plan before. It was meant to be a surprise, under wraps and in store. But some spoil sports had to go and ruin it for all by blowing whistles in spite of the damn law.
Bill, Benny, and Thomas Drake are trailblazers for leaking these tactics.
Hey, civil liberty activists, this is all legal. Anything we do now actually is.
How did...
You can't question my authority thanks to this.
And that shit's global, people. In Australia, it's now legal for the government to store all SMSs, searches, and emails. Australians, it's taking place under your nose. Unless you wake up, all your data are belong to ACO.
Come on, everyone knows. You can trust the government now. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about.
That might be the case with things that are happening now, because most people agree with most of the laws that are being handed down. But once the Illuminati reveal their agenda for you, this surveillance will enforce laws you no longer consent to. But by then it'll be too late to protest too, and anything you've ever said typed or browsed can or will be used against you.
I'm confused. So what should we do then?
What should we do? Nothing. This is all an illusion. It's just a ride, a delusion, the Matrix, the Maya deceiving us.
Oh, you hippies really make our job so much easier.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're picking up a signal from beyond the space-time continuum. Quick, switch on the juice channeling portal. Wait, is that George Orwell?
Good day to you.
Wow, what do we owe this honor to?
I tried to warn you noobs, but I see you are actually fools, or else you thought this was an instruction manual.
Yes, so can you advise us? What would you have us do?
An open and universal internet is the most effective tool you have to address the issues that afflict the world at hand. Therefore, protecting it is the most essential task that stands before your generation.
I think I understand.
Hush, man. You must not lose the internet. Heed this mantra. Who controls the internet controls the data. And who controls the data controls the future.
We're losing you.
I leave you with a tool to use.
An onion?
Don't be simple, Robert. This is but a simile. It stands for Tor.
Tor?
Google it. It's for anonymity. This onion router open network helps considerably against tyranny, but its abilities only work if all you use it consistently. And even if you don't use it, run it so its force swells.
Thanks, Mr. Orwell.
From now on, call me George Torwell. If we'd had such tools when I wrote this, well, it would have been so much simpler to tell Big Brother to go f himself. The mother sucking piece of shit.
Thanks, George Torwell, for manifesting direct from this memory hole of history to impress on us these messages. We're told we need safety, which is precious, yes, but can a society that can enforce all its laws ever progress? Hindsight shows that many figures guilty of thought crime turned out to be luminaries and heroes before their time. But if a surveillance state had reigned then in this form and design, just think of all the progress we may have all been denied. Could lobbies for women's or gay rights have appeared and thrived? Would revolutionary ideals have materialized? Would science have pioneered or even survived if every word had been monitored by thought police and spies? Big Brother brings chilling effects, freezing our collective hopes. He doesn't protect our safety, but protects the status quo, and threatens this internet, the one channel yet uncontrolled, whose openness we are now called upon to effect and uphold.
if you're tired of the other stuff, take a look at thenewamericanmedia.com.